This week on To the Contrary.
In the first full week since she secured the Democratic nomination, Hillary Clinton is ahead in the polls. Will it last? Then, a feminist president? Behind the headlines. This Father's Day, how millennial fathers are redefining the term dad.
Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, Hillary Clinton rising.
Nationwide polls show presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton gaining steadily. She's up 6 points in the Real Clear Politics polling average and by as much as 12 points in other polls. One of Clinton's biggest advantages, say pollsters, is voters trust her to handle a crisis. After last week's terrorist massacre at an Orlando LGBT nightclub, Clinton has called for an assault weapons ban, as well as a ban on selling guns to people on the no-fly list. And she has a new ally there. Donald Trump broke with Republicans agreeing that people on the no-fly list should be barred from purchasing weapons, a change that may woo some more much-needed women into his camp. Trump also this week came out for LGBT people. Some prominent gay Republicans are pushing Trump as the most gay-friendly Republican presidential candidate ever. But a poll in the Washington Blade showed Trump has the vote of less than 1/5 of LGBT voters, less than his predecessors Mitt Romney, John McCain, and George W. Bush.
So, Congresswoman Edwards, how has the Orlando massacre changed public opinion on gun control, or has it?
I don't think it has. I think public opinion has always been on the side of 100% background checks and making sure that terrorists don't get weapons. What needs to change is Congress.
I think that the public has not changed as well. I saw recently that it's pretty low down on our top list of concerns, and I think people realize it's a much more complicated issue.
Public has been there. The real question is, why does the Congress insist upon staying where it is? Because it's not because they're responding to their own constituents.
I think we're too close to the tragedy to really tell, but my sense is that it will change. There are some prominent conservatives who've come out and they've flipped their thinking on some things, because this was a terror and a hate crime and the crime committed by a psychopath all wrapped in one, and I think that changes some norms.
All right, and it also changed Donald Trump, who, of course, tends to switch positions like most people change shirts. But on the other hand, he's now, as opposed to being 100% NRA-rated approval, he is now looking at agreeing with Hillary Clinton to the extent that people on no-fly or watch list should not be able to buy automatic weapons. Is that going to help him?
Well, we'll see if it lasts over the weekend. And so I think that we should pay attention to Hillary Clinton's steady, consistent leadership on this issue, and we'll see what is ahead for Donald Trump.
Even if it could be approved, how much difference would it make? Would moms feel more secure? I mean, I can't tell you the number of interviews with moms of now deceased children I have listened to talking about tweeting while one young girl was bleeding out to death. I mean, right. Or texting with each other.
Yes.
Seeing reports like this is not going to change minds about what to do on gun control?
I've actually been quite surprised, as someone who's been in the world of political behavior and persuasion, not to see more movement at times. I think one thing that comes from some of these discussions is that people realize, as we were talking before the show, that there's a lot of different issues going into all of this, right? So there's mental health, and there's gun control, and there's terrorism, and so there's a lot of issues. And the one that I think gets left out the most, actually, is this human component. So, when you look back at a lot of these cases, what would have perhaps stopped them best is if somebody had come forward and said, this person is going to do something awful. And we have heard that time and time again. And I keep thinking, what could we be doing to make sure that people feel comfortable that if their spouse or a friend or someone else is going to do something awful, that we give them the resources to help stop it?
I think it'll make a difference if we seize upon where the public is now. And you notice how incremental the filibuster is. It's not asking for assault weapons, for example. It's a terrible thing that happens when an assault weapon is used, just keeps going at a civilian, and it tears apart the tissues inside the body. That should be enough to let everybody know a military-style weapon shouldn't be used in civilian society. But they're not going after that. They're going after things that they think they can begin to make people understand about gun control. And I do not believe that the votes certainly are there in the House, but I do believe that they have cracked open this issue in a way that even the horrific Connecticut killing of the 26 children did not.
Well, let's remember, too, though, since Orlando, there has been, well, actually, they merged or they partnered earlier, but Bloomberg, with all his billions of dollars and his spending on gun control, has now partnered with a group called Everytown that started out actually as one mom's Facebook post, Million Moms Against, for gun control. And she actually surpassed 1 million on Facebook. And now they're a grassroots organization supporting work to actually get gun control passed by Congress. Will it work? Will moms make the difference? 1 million plus moms?
I'm not sure. I just think we have to look at the crux of the matter here. And it's, in all these stories, there's one thing that's in common, and it's a young man disturbed picking up a gun and doing this. And that's what I think is the problem, is that why are these young men in our society picking up guns? I'm not sure. And this guy was just
because they can?
Well, because they
because
can.
nobody stops them?
They're available.
They're available, but there's something deeply wrong in society, because there's always a young man. This one was radicalized, but there were also some other things at play. We look at Columbine, we look at Aurora, we look at Newtown. There's one thing in fabric, and is banning all weapons going to do that? I think we should agree.
Except that the one thing that those things have in common is an AR-15 with a high-capacity magazine,
which were purchased legally.
That's right. And so what the problem that we have here is that the public overwhelmingly believes that we should have 100% background checks, that you shouldn't be able to go and buy at a gun show what you can't buy at a retail establishment. The public overwhelmingly believes that we need to remove guns from, not permit people who are on the terrorist watch list. We say you can get on a plane, you can't get on a plane, but you can go in and buy a gun. These are common sense measures that an overwhelming majority of Republicans and Democrats support. Congress needs to get the backbone to stand up to the National Rifle Association and get it done.
Is it more the House than the Senate?
I think that there are equal offenders in both houses.
And I was just going to add that I think it's interesting that you point to Congress, since I am not a lawmaker. I did recently look at some Pew Research, and I think when you break down the issue among respondents, people will say, yes, they agree with all of these things. But when you look at it in the context of job creation or health care, other issues in their lives, it still consistently falls all the way at the bottom of their concerns. And I think the last one I looked at, it was down there, the last or second to last issue of concern. So I think on a day-to-day basis, thankfully, as horrifying as these events are, to most people, they still seem pretty rare. And so out of sight, out of mind, makes it harder to
Well,
push
we've talked about mass shootings, but, what is it, 88 Americans every single day
Chicago,
lose their lives
Yes.
to gun violence. And this is something that we have the capacity to do something about.
And let's switch. I do want to get to Hillary Clinton's rise in the polls since Bernie Sanders stopped running fully. I mean, he's still out there, but his staff is gone, his campaign support dollars are gone, and his attacks on her are gone. So now she's 12 points up in the polls. What if the election were today? Would she absolutely trash Donald Trump?
Oh, pretty clearly. Pretty clearly. So, if she continues to show that she is incredibly well qualified to be president of the United States, and he continues to show that he is unqualified, then he is going to make her job easy. And that's what he's done in these first weeks following her securing the nomination.
And Republican response to this, what is it going to translate down to Democrats picking up the Senate? Will it go so deep that they pick up the House? Again, if it were tomorrow, and it's not tomorrow, it's 4.5 months out, but it's still getting closer.
Well, it's important for me to preface that I've been part of the Never Trump movement from the beginning, because I've looked at the empirical evidence and I'm seeing him being an electoral disaster for us, down ticket. Empirically, we look at the evidence and she has beat him in every national poll across the board. I think she has a convention fight on her hands still yet, despite what's happening. She's going to have to win over the millions of millennials that Sanders
Will she, if he does as poorly as it looks like he's going to do? I mean, I don't know if she really is going to even need them.
I think there's still a fight, and we shouldn't discount it. I think he's certainly done poorly, but we can't underestimate him. We underestimated him this whole time. Look, he won the primaries. He won them sweepingly. So
His problem is that he's still running a primary look. I think that Hillary Clinton is going to secure the nomination, that just like President Obama, she's going to bring on over 90% of those folks who were supporting Bernie Sanders, who are going to be enthusiastic about her election. She's proven every single day that she's qualified, capable, and fit, and that Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be president, and he gets to demonstrate that every single day.
We got to move on, but please let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay, at To the Contrary. From the battle for the White House to what a president looks like.
I may be a little grayer than I was 8 years ago, but this is what a feminist looks like.
Borrowing a line from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the U.S. president called himself a feminist for the first time. The conference, which filled the capacious Washington, D.C. Convention Center, drew together some 5,000 participants with a heavy dose of millennial women. Many represented small nonprofit groups working to empower women and girls. But there were also the headliners, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Oprah Winfrey, First Lady Michelle Obama, and more. The force behind this powerful show of support for the president's work on women's issues is Valerie Jarrett, his longtime senior advisor and member of his inner circle. I asked her what the administration's chief accomplishments have been for women and girls.
We have transformed the dialogue on several key issues. So, for example, just right now, we're talking about the ending of sexual assault on women, both here in the United States and around the world. We created a It's On Us campaign on over 500 campuses working to end sexual assault. Another important area where the president has really moved the needle is health care for women. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, women are now able to get important preventive care. Also, women are no longer able to be charged higher premiums just because they are women. The First Lady and the President launched the campaign, Let Girls Learn. 62 million girls around the world currently are not in school. Half of them adolescents. We want to get those girls in school. So in everything from education to sexual assault to working families issues, the dozens of cities and states and private sector employers who now are providing paid leave, paid sick time, workplace flexibility, affordable child care, raising the minimum wage.
This is a long string of achievements for a president who, as candidate Obama, started out on rocky terms with women voters. First, he bumped then-Senator and frontrunner Hillary Clinton out of the race for the Democratic nomination in 2008. Then he called a female reporter Sweetie during the campaign. Conservative women have never been fans, thinking his progressive agenda makes it harder for women to find employment.
So, Congresswoman Norton, now that the administration is just about over, at a report card, what grade on women's issues?
Oh, look, this women's issues have been at the center of this president's agenda. The very first bill he signed into law was the Lilly Ledbetter bill, making sure that women could have equal pay, even if they didn't raise the issue early on. And despite an obstructionist Republican Congress, he has used every effort to get in there, particularly with the Affordable Health Care Act, where he has equalized men and women, and where it doesn't cost you any more to be a woman if you go to the doctor.
You agree, Sabrina?
Well, no. I mean, I believe deeply in equal rights for women under the law, but I disagree tremendously with the premise of this.
Well, let me put the question this way: has he done anything to help women, as far as you're concerned?
Look, I mean, he's I think he's done a lot to paint women in a very negative light. I think the narrative and what I take the most offense with sort of my progressive counterparts is that the narrative out there is that society, the workplace, our schools are openly hostile to women and girls, and I think that's a terrible message to send. I think that there are challenges. I mean, I would fully admit that. We have a report out right now trying to talk about how can we address some of those economic challenges. But I think that life in America is very good. That is the narrative we should be pushing. And if there's more we can do, especially to help women around the globe, that is something that I would take away from a summit.
But
like
wait
this.
a second, who's pushing the narrative that life in America isn't good? That's Donald Trump,
well,
more
right.
than the Democrats.
I can't disagree with you there. But I think, for instance, something that Valerie Jarrett mentioned and came up at the summit is this idea that women don't have equal access to education here in the United States, and that little girls, and the president has said this many times, that his own daughters are not treated as fairly in the classroom as the little boys. That is something that's a terrible message. It's simply not the case. So women are outpacing men educationally. There are women and there are pockets of populations here who need much more assistance. But there are also lots of young men who need lots of assistance. And I hate to pit the genders against one another.
So I'm going to be the skunk at the party because I think we've made tremendous strides with women. I think this president has done a lot to promote issues related to women and girls. But women still represent only 20% of the Congress in terms of elected representation. Women still are only fewer than 5% of all corporate boards that make policies that deal with women. Of 42,000 elective offices held by women, held at all, only 29% are held by women. And women of color, black women, still only make 64 cents on the dollar. Latinas in Maryland, our Latina population makes only 49 cents on the dollar. That means that they're working like half the year for free. We still got a lot of work to do.
Well, you know, has this president, who is African American, has he done anything to dispel the notion that diversity is a done deal now in the United States, or has he done anything to dispel the notion that that's not actually the case? And if Hillary Clinton's elected, in other words, will people start looking at him and saying, okay, African Americans don't need government support because we've had a black president, and if Clinton is elected, will that happen with women?
Well, I don't think the president says that. I think the president fully acknowledges that while he might be the first African-American president, that we still have a long way to go in our workplaces, in our elective offices. And I think Hillary Clinton said it best. I mean, she said, yes, did we crack that glass ceiling a little bit? Sure, we did. But we've got a lot of work to do as women and as Americans. And you know what? Our millennial generation fully expects that we will do that work and look at themselves as equal partners, and we need to invest in that kind of vision.
As a president who loves Beyonce, I certainly don't think he's led from behind on this. I find it shameful, and I want to highlight this one point, is that he didn't pick a capable, strong woman for the Supreme Court of the United States. He played the political game, and he
You're talking about in his last appointment,
exactly, in the last appointment, Merrick. Purely political. He played the political game. I think he could have appointed a woman. He could have picked a woman rather and said, "This is who it is. She's strong. She's capable." And I think he hasn't helped our numbers legislatively. I mean, we still have 80-some women in the House.
But Sotomayor and
Hagan. And believe me, him appointing an African American woman, for example, still wouldn't have kept Republicans from sitting on the nomination. So I don't know that really matters.
Fair enough point, but I still think it would have been stronger, for him to make that pick. It would have said something bigger and better.
Yeah, the man is appointed to women.
That's right.
I understand, but
and the notion that he is to be faulted for appointing someone who he thought even the Republicans would let through is not very bipartisan.
And may well still let through after November if Hillary Clinton is elected, and she would pick obviously somebody more progressive.
Right. No, that's certainly true. I think, and perhaps I have less concern for sort of the growing numbers of women in office. But what I think I want to see, and I want to see our government do, is to allow for women and their families to make the decisions that suit them, whether it's financial or educational or professional, so that we can have the kind of economic opportunity that they need. And so often the emphasis is only on that professional success. It's not on that full family balance.
Well, all right. In honor of Father's Day, sorry, we're out of time on this one. In honor of Father's Day, we go behind the headlines and look at the new dad. Government research shows there are about 1.5 million fathers of young children choosing to stay home and care for them full time. Millennial dads are redefining what it means to be a father in ways that may surprise you, but have society and business caught up.
In a study we did recently on millennials, we asked the question, if your spouse made enough money that you could afford to be an at-home parent, would you consider doing so? And I think we had 44% of women say yes, but 51% of men said yes. So what you're seeing is, although the numbers in terms of who actually stays at home today are still skewed very much toward women, I think what you're seeing is a big change in attitudes of young men toward the legitimacy of men being at-home parents.
Brad Harrington is the executive director of the Boston College Center for Work and Family.
If you look back 5 or 10 years, you would say about 19 out of 20 stay-at-home parents, so 95% of at-home parents were women. Men were still, very much in the minority who made that choice. So the attitudes, as I mentioned, have changed. If the attitudes reflect the reality of choices people make, then we might see that number increase dramatically over the next decade or so.
More and more, women are becoming the primary breadwinners. Fathers are responding by prioritizing caregiving more than ever.
One of the questions we ask fathers is, if you look at what does it mean to be a good father, is it more about being a financial provider or more about taking care of the physical and emotional needs of your family? The vast majority of fathers, almost 68% of them, I believe, said that they saw the role of father as being an equal split. Dads today certainly don't see their role solely, nor primarily about being a financial provider. I think they see it as really a balancing act between those two things.
Some companies are adjusting to this reality by offering more paternity leave, but women are still far from equal.
If fathers don't have hands-on experience with their children very early on in their lives, the tendency is for a sort of a chain of events to be set in place, which is the woman stays home for 3 or 4 months with the child. She does all the hands-on caregiving. She becomes more confident and competent in her abilities to deal with the kid's needs. And the father has become sort of a supporting actor. And if they don't ever spend time flying solo, being with the kids, providing care one-on-one, then they aren't going to ever be in a position where they feel like they're really equal partners in the caregiving process.
And paternity leave isn't just good for dads. Research shows the whole family may benefit.
Taking that leave also allows mothers to return to work and to focus more on their career and not feel as divided in terms of their loyalties and responsibilities while they're at work, knowing that their husband is at home taking care of their child. When fathers are more actively engaged in and hands-on with their children, that there are better health outcomes for the children, better educational outcomes, and lower likelihood of risky behavior for the kids.
Experts say while society has evolved at a rapid rate, business and other organizations haven't fully caught up. Harrington says, still, there are encouraging signs.
The needs for fathers have changed to do more. The desire of fathers to do more has changed. And I think what is starting to slowly catch up is the organizational cultures. So organizations are starting to accept that reality more and recognize the important roles that fathers play at home.
So as the mother of a 6-month-old, were you surprised to see that more fathers want to stay home than mothers? Or at least that's what they tell pollsters.
Not at all, because that's what's going on in our friend circles. I mean, the guys are all like, sure, we'd love to stay home. Let's figure it out. With the truth here is that you need 2 incomes now in most of America to make family life work. So guys are, in some cases, making less than their spouses, and that's okay, because we're part of that millennial generation that came out of college when we had to become underemployed or unemployed for a short period of time, and some of those guys are still in that situation, and their wives are making more money, so the mindsets have shifted, and they're totally fine with staying home if it makes economic sense.
Well, I was surprised by that, and I loved it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Indeed, I think the most important thing that came out of this study, I'm very sorry that they're not doing as much of the housework and running.
Oh, I'm sorry about that too.
The most important thing that came out of this study is that they're spending more time with their children. The effect that this can have on children is untold, and it will automatically mean that in time, women have some greater help, even with the housework.
Right. Yeah, and I suspect that there may have been a little interviewer effect there, that men want to be portrayed well. Sure. That being said, I think that this spins a very positive light on men, a story that we should tell, because the bottom line, as Eleanor points out, is that these are the men that we want to use as role models for society. Right? These are so often the story about men is that they're sitting around playing video games while their wives are out there making money and doing things. And the reality is, it's the men who are helping with the family, helping with pay the bills.
That's the story we really want to be telling.
Look, I had a great dad who apparently was way before his time. And I think that I'm excited for my son who's a millennial, because I think that this just means a huge amount in terms of what dads and moms are going to be able to contribute to their families.
And I like to close by saying I do my grocery store poll, which is go to the grocery store and see. 20 years ago, it was shocking to see a man pushing a stroller, and now there's so many of them, and they're so diverse. It's just so heartwarming, and dads keep pushing those strollers and going to the grocery stores, and you're going to make the moms of America very happy. That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.
Psychologically, as a nation, we're not used to being very egalitarian. So this is what's really great.
They've done this by themselves.
Look at that.
You know, they have no role models to do this. Their own fathers didn't do this.
My father taught me how to go to the grocery store. I went to the grocery store with him every Saturday.
And what did you guys